Hey guys, welcome to today's episode of Trade the Chain. It is June 30th, 2022. Thank you for joining us. Before I begin, I just want to let everybody know that everything we discuss and comment on today's show is not financial advice, as always, and doesn't represent necessarily our views. So don't forget to do your own research all the time. Today, I am joined by Trade the Chain's Community Chief and Director of Research, Nick Mancini, as well as Principal at Trade the Chain, Doug DeRosa. We're going to speak about a couple different things today, but obviously the first thing, since Nick's on the show, we're going to cover the big boards and the overall macro environment of the market, both TradFi and crypto. So I look forward to that. And again, if you don't subscribe to the Trade the Chain YouTube channel, you should. Nick puts out a daily show every day there about midday Eastern time to really keep yourself and have a pulse on the markets for the day. We're going to go over the big boards. We're going to discuss what's happening really in the industry. A lot of news, it seems, every week coming out for the last bunch of weeks. But particular last night, we had news come out on Genesis Trading having 100 million or a couple hundred million up to $1 billion in losses that they're going to report on their books. And if you don't know who Genesis Trading is an institutional lender. And I believe as well as an execution desk. So that broke, big name in the space. Just because you haven't heard of it, it's big on the, behind the scenes with institutions. We're dealing with a story that came out on Celsius, where Sam Bankman-Fried and FTX have passed on any sort of rescue plan with Celsius, not meaning that anything bad is necessarily going to keep going with Celsius, but it just means that this counterparty isn't interested in dealing with them, citing a $2 billion hole in their balance sheet. So that's pretty relevant. A lot of our viewers are Voyager people, so we will include them into the mix as well as BlockFI. So let's get started. I'll just show everybody what's been happening. The three of us here, we're dealing in the crypto markets daily, and sometimes with a little less sleep than normal. But here we have a market cap standing at $860 billion. We're slightly higher than what the highs of 2017 were. So just keep that in mind. When you take a look at it. Here are the hottest on Twitter so far. BNB making it up there. Also, we have the market overview. Bitcoin, we're up today, but if you were up early this morning Eastern time, you would have noticed that we went into the 18,000s. Let's see, I was up at 5 behind the charts. Between 5 and 7, we were dipping out of the 18s, right, Nick?
Yeah, very early in the morning. Well, I think we briefly dipped there like very late at night, and then we tipped in there. I remember our conversation. The PCE numbers had just come out, and we had some immediate vol at the open, and we dipped, I think, to like 18.8. We've been recovering or attempting to recover, maybe is a better word, ever since. As you can kind of see that head on the potential inverse head and shoulders on that chart right there in the blue line.
All right, well, here's a good segue. Nick, take it away. Tell us what we're looking at. And also don't forget to mention Jay Powell in yesterday's ECB conference that he sat on a panel of and what he had to say.
Yeah, if you could, I think you need to pull up, or I think give the permission. There you go. So, so Jerome Powell was speaking with the ECB in relation to inflation. I believe they just rose interest rates by between 0.5% and 1%. I don't know exactly what it was. Obviously, that wasn't big market making news since we kind of push and pull everything. But Jerome Powell, gave us a bit of an indication of kind of what he's thinking. Whereas, during the Fed meetings, he kind of really tries to skirt the line. I think what was the specific words? There will be more pain. More pain is coming. Something like that along those lines. And when you hear the U.S. Fed chair saying that expect pain, you can pretty much bet that he is being 100% serious. And I think the market, very much began to take that seriously. And we started to see, we were already kind of on a gradual decrease, and we had kind of predicted that. But you can see the exacerbation, after certain statements have been made. We just kind of really hung down there. And in relation to sentiment, we can't go back super far, but if you've been following the Daily Show and our newsletter, you'd know that sentiment was extremely bearish towards the end, or towards the beginning of this week, end of last week, and we've not been able to hop out of the neutral to bearish level. And when you have extreme sentiment in one direction that turns into neutral sentiment, typically it spells continuation of the previous movement, which is exactly what's happened, and we're now tipping to the recent low. So seeing sentiment back now tipping bearish neutral after that, not exactly a positive sign. We're seeing very similar to ETH. Now it's trying to curve up, of course, but anytime we just sit in this bearish to neutral range without really breaking one way or the other into quote unquote bullish, which would be above 60, or quote unquote bearish, which would be below 40, without that, you have to expect continuation of previous sentiment. And that is, a big reason for our thesis. Now, what the big numbers today were core PCE numbers, and we discussed this in depth in the newsletter and in the Trade the Chain community. The expectations was a 0.4% rise. We got a 0.3% rise, and I think that's immediately why we saw upwards or bullish volatility, I should say. Markets opened around here. We immediately had a quick sell-off. I think bulls wanted to immediately push that up. They got crushed. And now we're moving higher, and we're underneath the 200 moving average on the 15-minute. And now, Doug and Alex and I all had this discussion, talking about moving average resistance and things like that. And of course, what it didn't act as true resistance here, but it could barely break up here. The 150 have been acting as resistance, and now we're testing it again. So if you're looking at the kind of the entire board at play here, you're hearing Jerome Powell, there will be more pain. Inflation or GDP numbers that came through worse than the estimates at the time. Same with other inflation metrics that we discussed previously. Jerome Powell says there's going to be pain. European Central Bank is lifting up interest rates, I think, a bit higher than expected. And we don't really have a great case for a bull run. But the fact that we do have positive PCE numbers potentially means that we're starting to come to that top of inflation. Doesn't mean we are, but to the market, it's like, hey, that's a possibility. So they have to price that in. And that's why we're likely seeing some relief here. I'm not buying this break above the 200 moving average until we break it. We're, of course, already oversold. MACD looks like a potential flip. Stock RSI is overbought. We're not oversold, we're overbought, I should say. So until this cleanly breaks higher, I am still in the camp that it will likely be rejected. And I've been beginning to stack shorts in this trading range right here, because we've been rejected by the VWAP multiple times. We're about to hit the 5-minute 200-day moving average on the 15 minutes, on the 5-minute, on the 15-minute, still being rejected by the 50-day moving average, still underneath that VWAP. We're not seeing what we want to see out of a trend flip, but that does not mean that we're not seeing, or that doesn't mean that we're not in a relief area where we couldn't see, plausibly 19.4, plausibly 20K if something comes. But, until this number cracks resistance, which is now the trading range that we were in yesterday, until that breaks resistance, I cannot in good conscience be a bull or encourage anyone to take bullish action. Unless you were longing the dip this morning, it is very dangerous to begin to get long around this level. And why do I say that? Let's go back to the daily. This is what we covered yesterday. Now, if this closes like this, maybe we have a case. But we still have 4 or 5 hours to go. And we closed with a spinning top. And we continued to move lower. So, we still have plenty of time in the day for this to come to fruition. But of course, if it closes this beautifully, then, we may start to think about a reversal. But of course, 4 hours still underneath the 50-day moving average, still underneath the 100-day moving average. And we're not seeing true strength in the market yet. So looking at Bitcoin, this doesn't look longable to me yet. So it's one of those things where you're using a little bit of voodoo You're using a little bit of, your gut, a lot of bit of technicals, and then trying to assess the fundamentals at hand. Nothing to me seems positive from a crypto perspective, especially with how correlated we are with equities.
Nick, for us to form
it's the truth.
For us to form a bottom, Nick, do we necessarily need to have, what they call capitulation, where you throw the baby out with the bathwater? Like, obviously everybody's looking for that, and God forbid if it's 8,000 on BTC or 15. But do markets need to have that to go forward, to have like a cleansing, or can we actually find a bottom here at this 1918 and chop sideways and then move up once there's no more bad news to come out?
Yeah, so I'm trying to find a good example of a true bottom. Typically what you'll see is like, I'm sorry for all this nonsense. Typically you'll see this massive wicking on a higher time frame. And I think people expected that here, but obviously we didn't get, the confirmation that we wanted. But I think the easiest bottom signal to the first step is big wick on a high time frame. Now, long ago, this was a massive wick. Obviously, we made it look childish from some of these others, but typically the first step of a bottom is a large wick. Now, what we all know that in the technical perspective, confirmation matters, because you can have a certain candle type, but it doesn't mean that it's going to move one way or the other until you have confirmation of the next candle. That's what makes technical analysis both beautiful and difficult at the same time. But we have tweezers here, multiple sets of tweezers here, tweezers here, tweezers here. And, again, we had it here, but it did not confirm. So, that's what you would look for first, is another candle, hopefully that looks like this, where you have a long wick down, that touches, a core area, which, I'm drawing down to 12K here, but, a wick down to 12 with a body that, sits up at 18, I would start to buy that immediately, because that to me looks very much bottomy, and I like that level personally. Now,
all right,
what would make me dive in is a next candle confirmation that begins to look tweezery like this. I'm sorry for the long-windedness, but it's a difficult
it's all right.
question.
It's all right. If you could zoom in, I want to explain to the folks what a tweezer formation looks like, both a bearish and bullish one. If you notice right there, in the center of Nick's chart, you have at one of the bottoms a bearish tweezer, which is to the top side. And if you could just explain what the twin full body candles represent, both bottom and top, that'd be great for people to understand.
Yeah, which one are you in reference to? I mean, I see a few tweezers.
Well, I see a bunch of tweezer formations.
I know, right? I think this might be the easiest, just because it also came with a gravestone doji. And gravestone's the easiest because it's literally just, a little tip with the little gravestone. But so tweezers is basically just, nearly identical wicks with identical tops is the easiest way to say it. Typically, you'll see identical bodies as well. And that's really the true formation. So these aren't like the most technically beautiful ones, but like to any technical analyst who saw that midway through the week and is like, oh my God, those are tweezers, because the bodies are matched up, the wicks are matched up. And you can see it on the bottom as well. Body matched up, wicks matched up. Here, body matched up, wicks more or less matched up. All nearly identical as well. Here, this wouldn't be a true tweezer because of the pattern that it was in. It was more a bear flag, but ended with a bear tweezers. This one as well, another gravestone. Pushed us lower, but look, confirmation mattered because we then got a bull hammer that lifted us higher. So, when you're looking at these things, the confirmation matters, and that's why sometimes it's difficult to delay. But when you're looking on a high time frame, if a tweezers confirms like this and we start moving higher, that would be the trade to be like, okay, 50 to 60, and you would probably start closing it out around the resistance of this level. And that's how you would trade from a technical perspective based on candles. But of course, we have a litany of other data to also parse through, which can add to both the confusion and the clarity, so.
Very true. Very true. All right. Thank you very much for that overview. I know that you and I have been trading through the day and night, and we've been having pretty good luck with these markets. So the search for yield is never gone. All right. So in the comments, there's a lot of people talking about 3AC, talking about Voyager, talking about, what we put in the title, discuss. And I want to jump into that now. The first thing I want to bring everybody's attention: 80,000 Bitcoin millionaires have been wiped out in the great crypto crash of 22. I mean, that's pretty sensational title there by Cointelegraph, but that's representative of all the wallets that held $1 million in Bitcoin or more that no longer exist. So some food for thought. The first thing is, let's get on to Three Arrows. Three Arrows, it's been talked about on Twitter. It's been talked about on, I guess, a lot of other people's podcasts or YouTube channels for the last 2 weeks. So we more or less understand what has happened to Three Arrows. Now, the other day, they were forced into liquidation by a British court. And so this begins the process of basically the courts going through assets, their counterparties, what their positions were, every desk, every pencil, and seeing what has any value left. There's a lot of, their positions, I believe, contained a lot of locked up tokens for the future. A few things, just off the cuff on that is, one, today's market, when those tokens decide to unlock, and I believe there's staggered tranches across many different protocols over the course of the fall time. Here we have a market that's pretty depressed right now. I don't see a lot of value being had in those unlocked tokens. And not only that, but unfortunately, they're probably already pre-pledged on earlier loans. Three Arrows is all but gone. So let's just say that. Singapore is also looking into or reportedly looking into violations of AUM caps over there in Singapore, which is where they are based as a registrant. And so who knows what kind of fudgery has gone on behind the scenes. That being said, Nick, we got Genesis hitting the news cycle last night. I mean, that was a pretty big one. And some people say $1 billion.
I think this is what really helped push us lower. I know there was a lot of discussion around the ETF and this, but this was new news. The ETF was news in the sense that, I think we were anticipating we were anticipating bad news, hoping for good news. But the difference in market impact for me is both timing as well as preparation. Now, the ETF denial news was immediately followed by a lawsuit to the SEC from the name slipping my what was it?
Grayscale.
Grayscale, of course, yes. So to me, if you've got a freaking full lawsuit prepped up that's ready to tackle the SEC, that is weeks of prep, potentially months. Someone is hearing about that. We know what's going to happen. You don't spend that capital expecting to win that battle. So to me, market had that priced in. This literally, I think 10, 14, literally 2 weeks ago around about, Genesis came out and was like, we're good. We mitigated all losses. We're fine. And then more info started coming out about their relation to the media and things like that. And now we know the full story, which is a lot worse than it was for a key player who we once thought was more or less safe. So to me, this hurt the news, and literally the timing of this news knocked us right off of that squeeze that we discussed yesterday, because we were discussing closing our trades, and I was like, no, I think this is a squeeze, and it was, but we completely elevated back down once this news dropped. Then the ETF news dropped, and we started the range that we formed slimmed. Finally, S&P cracked overnight, which led to the crypto crack as well. But this is significant because, one, told us they were good. Two, had ties to the media, were already speculative. There was already speculation of potential suppression of the story. And then C, truth comes out and it's worse than expected. So not positive, but how much further does this story impact us? I'm not sure, because I think the big story at hand moving forward that no one's really talking about are those unlocks that you mentioned. 3AC was deep in many top projects. Polkadot, AVAX. They had Solana allocation. So although a year down the road, It's all coming up. We had DeFi summer a year ago. What do you think DeFi summer was? It was intelligent market making for the releases of small supplies of tokens so that they have massive pumps with 12 to 18 month unlocks. We're 12 months in. It's potentially
And AVAX has been a short player's darling.
Exactly.
Recently.
So you tack on the obviousness of 3AC's liquidation, token unlocks, and multiple funds continuing to let us know how far the contagion is getting. Clearly, there's a cap to how bad it can get. But especially with these unlocks and the lack of transparency around all of these operations balance sheets, there is definitely potential for more downside in relation to that.
Okay. All right. Let's move it on over to Celsius. It affects more of our viewers. If you are not aware, folks, Celsius put out a tweet for the first time in I don't know how long. They've been absolutely radio silent. Let's see, when did this go?
Operations continue, but you can do nothing with your money.
Yeah, more or less.
That's sickening.
Yeah, 1 hour ago, right here, they put out a tweet saying, basically, we're all still here, we're all working, and doing what we can. I don't know what they're doing. I can't speculate. Well, I can speculate, but I think communication is so utterly important during these times, particularly when you're a fiduciary. So, not doing such a fantastic job at that, and also. Problems seem to be stemming from a $2 billion hole on their balance sheet, which was found by FTX, as I would presume was going through their ODD, their due diligence process, into some sort of rescue plan for Celsius, but have decided to pull out. So it's not looking so good. Nick, it's really looking like they're trying to, dodge a chapter 11 bankruptcy. What are your thoughts on this?
I think I'm going back and forth, honestly. I mean, I think 3AC and Celsius are likely done. If FTX is publicly saying, hey, this looks pretty screwed, and we haven't heard anything from Goldman Sachs, that was just pretty much a flash in the pan type of news. And the fact that they still have not authorized any withdrawals or whatever's going on, whatever you can do, trades, withdrawals, whatever, means that no one's really helping backstop the issue. Like, with Voyager, at least, they're operating, trades are happening, withdrawals, deposits, it's not lickety split, but they have room to operate. And Celsius has zero room to operate right now, even though they say that they're operating. So to me, it doesn't look positive for Celsius in this condition. I guess, you still have the Goldman Sachs information to hang on to. But I would imagine if the de facto crypto, market's god, however people perceive SBF, is coming out and saying, hey, this doesn't look good, I can't imagine other investors are going to now disagree with him and try to save Celsius. That's just personal thought.
I was just going to add, Alex, too, that obviously at this stage, a lot of people are in the hope stage, unfortunately, right? So the buyers are greedy, and those people that are long are kind of hoping for some good news. That's why the Genesis news was really disconcerting, because you had some interesting price action yesterday. You had UST, I think, rallied 400%. Luna Classic rallied. VGX, obviously, Celsius has kind of moved up in the last week or two. I think everybody was like, wow, there's no new news in this cycle. Maybe there's a bottom here, and maybe we could build on this. And then, like Nick said, that news came out last night. It's like, wow, like how long is this going to last for? So until this news cycle abates, and we've been in financial services, all of us, for a long time, we know that counterparties deal with other counterparties. This is a really tangled web that needs to be unwound, and it will take some time, unfortunately.
Yeah, I completely agree. Hopium is a hell of a drug. And quite frankly, greed is why we don't sell at the top. And that is for every person on this video here. We all get stuck with the greed factor at some point during our investment theses. I want to go over to BlockFi real quick. Nick, any insights into BlockFi, which is run by Zach Prince and co?
Sorry, I'm getting that weird bugginess on the stream. every now and then. So
That's all right.
I saw he was buying Bitcoin this morning.
Okay,
Publicly.
so I want to stop you right there because it's interesting. So I mean, what we do know is that there's an alleged offer from FTX to buy out BlockFi. Probably for some, they initially offered them a lifeline, and now people are saying it's an offer. Who knows? Probably for very cheap. But to your point, what was interesting, I don't know if you noticed that Zach Prince used to actually do that a lot. He used to post his BTC buys on a regular basis. And this morning he came out and posted that he just bought, 0.25 of a Bitcoin. Again, I find the communication confusing.
It's to me, it's irresponsible. I get why from potentially multiple perspectives. He's a crypto CEO. If he's not buying crypto, worried. B, he's buying on BlockFi, so he's trying to show people that BlockFi is working. So I get it, but it's like, bro, like you literally, a report just came out that FTX your entire company is going to get wiped for pennies on the dollar because you have no idea how to run a fund because you're making a crazy loan, absurd loans to crazy people. And so, is that the right decision to be making at the time? I mean, in relation to the company itself, just the fact that FTX and Morgan Creek are kind of sparring for how it's going to work, good sign. In relation to Celsius, nobody kind of wants to deal with it, bad sign. But if I was a CEO, I would just be maintaining immediate transparency on what is happening and what we expect to come and what we'd like to come. And, if that means that I have to buy $10 worth of Bitcoin to show people, but I wouldn't just be dropping random tweets like, bought 0.25 of Bitcoin. It's like half your customers can't access their funds and you're spending $5,000 on a negligible purchase.
Well, all right,
just to
so
show me it works.
I do have to stop everybody right there. Because reading the comments, and we've been on for about 27 minutes. Here's some interesting news, guys. FTX closes in on a deal to buy embattled crypto lender BlockFi for $25 million in a fire sale. First of all, this just dropped. This is CNBC 30 minutes ago when we first started. And I saw some
Thank
tweets.
You, viewers.
I want to, thank you everybody in the chat for letting us know as we continue to speculate on the fate of BlockFi. But yeah, look at this, $25 million.
Pomp wiped, Morgan Creek wiped.
Yeah,
literally pennies on the dollar. They made 9-figure investments in that company.
Oh yeah. Oh, this was a multi-billion-dollar valuation company. This has just wiped out the equity.
Crazy
in Morgan Creek and Anthony Pompliano's investment. It's gone. It's a loss.
Bearish?
What is that doing to the markets, Nick, in real time?
That's what I'm trying to comprehend what it is right now. I mean, we've got some positive price action, but that's not because, or that's likely because the S&P is tipping on resistance right now as well. I'm not seeing any immediate. What that happened 30 minutes ago?
That's when it came out on CNBC.
So 30 minutes ago, we did have a price boost. We had a small price boost in the minutes, but it was also coincided with a price boost on the S&P. If this was truly impactful, then I think we would see some divergence from the correlation. So I don't think that this is very impactful. It's to the markets at least. But I think this is impactful to our perception of the markets going forward because some of the most intelligent investors in crypto just got destroyed by SPF.
That's what I want to discuss, right? So what you see at face value is FTX just bought this business for $25 million in a fire sale. Okay, that's huge news. The bad news, or what you have to watch out for, is the fact that you just had a large VC fund in crypto get their equity wiped out by this fire sale. And that's big. Why? Because this is how contagion happens. And it just means that it keeps going and going down the line. So now we got to take a look and see, I guess, find out whether Morgan Creek and Anthony Pompliano come out with a statement saying, hey, we just got our equity wiped out, we're okay. Or, hey, we just got our equity wiped out, and now maybe some of our portfolio companies will be affected, or maybe our operations will be affected. But yeah, this is what systemic damage is.
And the broader implications too, right? For yield platforms and the perception of those. And obviously, again, I follow the economy just like Nick. And, what that translates to all these employees that were hired there. Now they had to reduce headcount. Now these people are gone, right? What that means to the economy. You're going to have people unemployed and whatnot. So yeah, not obviously a good story on all levels. So
yeah, no, I did.
Yeah.
I was reading up on the story last night, and I was like, because the story initially was that because of the term sheet that BlockFi had signed for the $250 million loan, it basically gave FTX the option to purchase the equity. And now I think Alex may be the more expert in terms of how these deals would get made on the back end. But basically, if the layman terms say, I give you $250 million, I at any time can buy all your shit for $25 million. I mean, it's the best deal ever if the company is not, fully distressed and maybe in a kind of a Voyager-like situation. And of course, we know SBF is a numbers wizard. So, I think Morgan Creek was doing it for show, banging their fists on the wall. But I think they had no dog in the fight from a legal perspective. Once you sign that sheet, I think it was preliminary. But Alex, I mean, tell me, if the preliminary says, you sign this, we're going to sign that, it's kind of a step one to the step two. And if you don't do step two and you do step one, you're probably going to get sued. You don't have any money. So what else are you going to do?
Yeah. All these deals are predicated on stuff. And I just want to say that, clue folks in, some people start bitching about how loans are given to, counterparties on a risky basis. These things are deals that are backdoor deals. A lot of them are predicated on other things. So let's take a look at Tether. Tether led an investment round to Celsius for $10 million. Peanuts for Tether. But that was predicated on Celsius taking a $1 billion loan from Tether. You don't know that, hey, somebody's going to put in for an equity round with one company. But the deal is I have to have access to borrow a couple $100 million at a preferred interest rate, uncollateralized. That's the way these things work. And like us with our investments and trying to catch the top, that's called the greed factor. And when the tide pulls out, it's when this crap collapses, man. Let's move on to Voyager. Now, I just want to, I jumped into one of the Twitter spaces with Big TCO the other evening. That guy has been hosting them daily for a little bit now. And I spoke to the folks in there. But, I'll keep it real. This whole landscape right now stinks. I'm not worry-free. Doug's not worry-free. Nick's not worry-free. We all are, I'm in this with you guys. I have an account with Voyager. As many of you know, I've been a proponent of Steve for quite some time. So I'm going to go through a couple things. One is, when I get phone calls and texts from people over the last week, what do you think is going to happen to Voyager? And the bottom line is, I don't know. Okay, I'm not an insider. I don't know. And Steve, shouldn't be telling me or anybody else that information anyway. What I do know is that, and I relay this to people, is that I'm as comfortable as I can be in this situation. I know there was a loan, maybe partially collateralized, maybe uncollateralized, that was given it was rehypothecated from assets under management, which is nothing new to the finance industry. It's been happening since the day banks were invented. So that doesn't bother me. Risk parameters and process and procedures should be in place where things are mitigated, because we don't live in an up-only world. All right. Now, this counterparty decayed on the loan. This counterparty is now being forced into liquidation. Did they get anything back? Maybe they do, but very little to zero. That's what my feeling is. Okay, how do I feel about only being able to withdraw a certain amount out of my account? Well, a lot of you know, a lot of you don't. Voyager was more or less my bank, is my bank. That's where most of my assets are kept. They haven't stopped working, And I get people all the time. Every once in a while, there's going to be a slow up in a withdrawal or a slow up in transfer. You know, I executed a transfer. It took 3 days to get there. I executed one the next day, and it took overnight. I didn't have to call anybody to get that forced through. It's working the way it's always worked. Okay. Our bet is on the person who's running the helm because, and trust me, I think we'd rather have Steve trying to get out of the situation than we would a 25-year-old kid. Not saying 25-year-old kids aren't smart. I'm sure a lot of you are in between the bong hits. But the thing is that he has relevant experience. He's been through troubled times before. So I'm banking, you know, my goal is to bank on his leadership and how he navigates these waters. This is a litmus test. I'm not withdrawing money out to get it off the platform. I mean, we're talking about $10,000 withdrawals and all that. I have businesses that I use Voyager for transmitting money. That's the only stuff I'm either withdrawing out of. Did I move money to cash? Yeah, so I moved some money to cash to fill up the FDIC requirement. Anything I switched over to USDC, it was because I wanted out of some long positions that I had in Voyager. Other than that, I'm here. I'm with everybody else. Do I own a crap ton of VGX? Hell yeah. Is it down a crap ton? Yeah. That's why my blood pressure's high. But what am I going to do? I don't have special powers. I'm here with you guys. That's all I got to say for now.
Thank you. It was heartfelt.
But what I do want, this is where Doug comes into key. And I think Nick can agree. And Doug is the guy who's like the everyday man. And I love his opinion because he shares anecdotes from, you know, his friends that he either goes shooting with or golfing with or whatever. Doug, how is it? Like, what is it down on the pavement? What is it with the everyday person in your eyes with crypto and how it relates to the economy?
You know, I think in terms of at least these players that we just spoke about, it's very similar to obviously 2007 and 2008, right? Where every time you put on CNBC, the word deleveraging was on. So right now we're having a massive deleveraging, right? And so now there's a reset, and we're having this reset. I think that what people will have to do personally is obviously go back and say, you know, how did they navigate this whole crypto winter that we're in? And when it ends, like you said, Alex, we don't know. Nick doesn't know. But I think all of us have to kind of go back and say, you know, maybe there's some things that we could have used Nick's technical analysis more, right? Like don't buy anything if it's under the 50 or under the 200 day, right? And then going forward, I think with some of these yield platforms and whatnot, I think it goes back to, and why I referenced 2007 and 8 was trust and confidence, right? There's right now a tremendous lack of trust and confidence in the system, which the irony was Satoshi created this because there was a lack of trust and confidence in the traditional financial system, right? So I think we do need some trust and confidence to come back, and it will at some point. Again, the speculators never leave. As I referenced earlier, UST and some of these were popping yesterday, right? So money's going to always come into this ecosystem. There'll be new players. But I think it's certainly damaging right now, right? And we will get through this, obviously. In terms of anecdotally, like you said, the man on the street, you know, I spent a lot of time on LinkedIn for Trade the Chain, working with partnerships of other firms. I am seeing a lot more people, you know, saying, hey, I lost my job. Most of those have been in the crypto space, but there are some people in some other areas. So that's, again, the thing that the economy is going to have to work through. And when Powell says this will be difficult, it will be a good 3 to 6 month period. So I know that everybody's going to go out and enjoy their holiday weekend. I think they said 90% of the travel this weekend will be on the highways. Obviously, people are not immune to the high gas prices. Go out, obviously, enjoy the weekend, enjoy the time with your family and friends. But this will be a reset of sorts. And like Nick says, the consolidation, those moving averages moving up again, that's going to take time, right? We will find a bottom. But I think the broader part is for all of us to figure out what's going to be remaining of this, right? The system will be here. Is CeFi going to be the big thing? Is it really going to go now towards DeFi because of the trustless system, and maybe that's more trusted? Be interesting how this really evolves. And we really are in the early stages of this. It's only a 10-year project at this point, right? So.
Yeah, and I think another good point to make in relation to that is like you asked me kind of the tech, like what to look for a technical bottom. And I think another, outlook in relation to what you're talking about is looking for a fundamental bottom, which is what's going to obviously translate into future price action. So what everybody should be looking for is, we've been banging the drum, listen to the Fed, don't fight the Fed, just listen to what Jerome Powell says and interpret it correctly, or try to, is always the goal. But the metric that we will be using to be like, oh my gosh, we may be out of the weeds, and that doesn't mean all altcoins. We're talking large caps here, Bitcoin and Ethereum primarily, is when the Fed rate hike cycle ends. So if you think about rate hikes, it's basically a giant curve. You start at 0 typically, or 1 or whatever. You inch your way up, and you finally hit a cap, and that cap is what either sends us into a recession or makes us hit those goals that the Fed has, i.e. inflation, unemployment. And then eventually they start easing the brakes, and they lift us into full-blown beautiful capitalism, bull runs. So what you want to look for is that the curve, like the steepening of the curve for the Fed hike cycle. And then it's funny, the Fed is looking for the steepening of the curve for inflation. So once we know that inflation is curving over, and then we'll know that the Fed funds rate is curving over, then we'll know that we're on likely the other side, and we can begin making buys with a little bit of confidence again. And that's why I told everybody, I'm not buying yet until we know that we're hitting the top of that curve. Anything before that, you're purely guessing. And we will make an educated guess later, but right now there's little education to be had in reference to when the federal funds rate is going to top. And if you're just guessing and assuming, I think we all know that age-old adage.
I was waiting for you to say it, but all right.
Some things are better left unsaid, I think,
I agree. Bottom line, takeaways from this. We're not different from you. And anybody you look at in YouTube or any of that stuff, that we all use the same companies together. If we have wins and we have losses, and the goal at the end of the day is to make sure you have more wins than losses. The goal at the end of the day is to make sure you can pay your bills. Okay, I haven't sold any of my VGX, and that's not because I'm some superhero person. It's because I didn't need to pay for bills. So I still have that, and I've taken massive losses on it. You have Nick over here. He's a highly skilled trader, follows the market on an hourly basis. He's finding yield, picking up yield during these times, just in arbitrage on a day-over-day basis.
And I'll tell you what, I didn't start capitulating, large amounts of assets until that 40K break. It took me quite some time. And I think we're very transparent around that. I told the community 40K cracks, I'm out. I'm done. And I stabled up. And it took me much longer than it should have. But we do our best to at least educate everybody on the actions we're taking. Rarely do I take actions that I don't telegraph to the Trade the Chain community at bare minimum.
100%. I'm 90% in cash and stables. 90%.
I'm 100. I'll be completely honest with you. I am all cash right now.
Technically, you're not 100 for small periods of a day.
That's true. Well, okay. I have some shitty NFTs that I still have that I'm fingers crossing are some blue chips. So if you want to consider that, and I will. And okay, I'm not 100% because I do have some special allocations. But for every usable amount of my income is in stable coins for the most part.
Yeah, and let's talk about yields for a second. Yields are gone. Okay, don't plan your crypto voyage or outsized reoccurring revenue based on yields. We saw what yields did. I love the line. If you don't know where the yield's coming from, you are the yield. That is so true. But the fact of the matter is, and listen. Going back to Voyager, keeps the ship moving. Everything goes great. And I'm a huge HODLer for him. Those yields, don't expect 8-9%. Expect realistic yields. That's where we're going down to. I will say I was never a customer of Celsius. I've never been a customer of BlockFI. And so I can't speak to those as much as I speak to my everyday life with Voyager. Anything else, guys? Nick, this was a good episode. I really enjoyed it. And people can ask us questions all they want when we're on. we'll answer it truthfully.
And if you're a Trade the Chain community member, feel free to tag me for, obviously we're going to be, this doesn't last forever. I should be on CoinDesk TV in 45 minutes. I'm waiting for that official tweet to come out to give everybody the link. But 4 p.m. Eastern, or 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time hold on. Is it 4 p.m. or 3 p.m.? Let me just double check that. It's one of the, I get things mixed up because we're all on different time zones half the time. So yes, 1 p.m. Eastern, or 1 p.m. Mountain, 3 p.m. Eastern, 45 minutes from now, I'm on CoinDesk TV discussing what the heck is going on in the market. So please tune in for that. Yeah. My daily show I do every day at about 12:30 Eastern on the Trade the Chain YouTube channel. Typically try to telegraph all of my thoughts before the market open Monday through Friday, at least Monday through Thursday. So Trade the Chain gets all of kind of my trade ideas or directional ideas at very least. So again, Trade the Chain community is easily where you can always get all of my information. We have the daily show. We're doing media. In my opinion, we're one of the more prolific, market analyst groups, whereas everybody else is kind of just twiddling their thumbs right now, hosting Twitter Spaces. So I feel like it feels good to be able to help people.
Hey, Doug, cancel our Twitter Spaces for later.
Just you guys doing wine tastings, right? Isn't that what it was going to be?
No, there's no. Wine tastings was 6 months ago, man. We're
down to beer tastings now.
We're doing Costco wine tastings now.
But definitely follow Trade the Chain at Trade the Chain. It's on the bottom of the screen there to get the updates for his TV appearance there. And again, talk to us in the community if you remember anytime you want. Also, real quickly, this might become my new daily show format. So keep an eye out. This is like a pilot we're doing right now. So that's all I got to say. Folks, hang on to your handlebars. Like always, we're in this with you. We get affected the same way as you guys. Any questions, hit us out. We're always around Twitter, here, whatever. Thanks for stopping by, folks.